Hey guys, welcome back. Over the last 2 months, I've started the journey of building my 2023 Jeep Gladiator Rubicon into an overland camping machine. And over these last 2 weeks, I've completed 2 camping trips, one with my family and one solo. And although I am about halfway through with my build and I'm going to continue the course with my current setup, I have developed a few thoughts over the last few weeks that I want to share with you about mistakes that I've made or regrets that I have in building my setup the way I've done it. So one of the first decisions that I had to make when I came over to the Jeep from my minivan was, do I want a Wrangler or a Gladiator? Now the Gladiator is a truck bed style Jeep, where the Wrangler is a 5-seater SUV with a little bit of trunk space behind it. And so I chose to go with the Gladiator. And the reason I chose to go with the Gladiator was I believe that I would have more space inside of the truck bed than I would inside of the Wrangler for overland camping essentials. The first mistake or regret that I may have made in selecting the Gladiator is that I have a family of 5, and with my family of 5, we do max out the cargo capacity of the Jeep Gladiator. There's 5 seats, there's 4 cup holders, there's not really any room for additional backpacks or luggage inside of the passenger compartment. And so now that I've had a few trips with my family, both just traveling as well as camping, I've started to realize that possibly the Wrangler might have been a better fit for my family. So when we're traveling, everybody wants to bring something with them. For example, my young children want to bring toys and other devices, and with the size of the inside of the Gladiator, there's really not a whole lot of space for those kinds of things inside of there. It's essentially elbow room. None of my children are currently required to sit in a car seat or boosters anymore, so they have plenty of hip space, but the shoulder and elbow space is really where we're lacking inside of the Gladiator. You see, both the Jeep Gladiator and the Jeep Wrangler have wider fender flares, and the tires actually stick out compared to the body. I know a lot of Jeep enthusiasts already know this, but coming from either an SUV or a passenger vehicle, most of those vehicles have the passenger compartment aligned with the edges of those tires. So that space, for example, with this Jeep, if it was as wide as the tires were, would be essentially another foot width of shoulder room or hip room inside of the vehicle. Don't get me wrong, I know this is a Jeep and it's meant to go off-road. And so another thing that I've realized as I've started wheeling with my Jeep is that having the wheels extending a little further prevents some potential body damage when you're out getting close to rocks. And what I mean by that is your wheels, your tires, and possibly your fenders will make contact with rocks that are to your left and your right well before your body panels would. But if you're in a traditional SUV, for example, something like a 4Runner, where the tires are under the body and frame, I believe you're more likely to potentially damage the sides of the vehicle in those extremely tight places. So I think that's enough about the internal space inside of the Jeep. The second thing that I regret about what I've done so far with my Overland build is getting this bed rack. I don't necessarily have an issue with the quality or build or price. It's an excellent deal at about $450 or $500 depending on what deals are going on. However, if I'm going all out and I want to build the ultimate overland camper, I feel like I should have went with something like an RSI Smart Cap that the sides open up, but ultimately at night or when you're away from the vehicle, you can close everything and lock it up. I'm not necessarily worried about theft where I'm at, but when I go traveling and I have to stay at locations that I'm not familiar with, I'll have to either park the vehicle at a location where I can keep my eyes on it, or pack lighter so that I don't have anything back there that I'm worried about somebody stealing. Another concern with this bed rack is that it's about 4 inches shorter than the cabin. And the reason that's a problem is it has limited my options for what kind of rooftop tent I can put on the rack. My original vision for the build was to have a wedge-shaped tent that goes on top, because I believe that those are easier to open when you're out overland camping, require less setup time, therefore making them more efficient. However, due to the cap being shorter, I'm not able to actually put something on there like that without possibly raising the rack back here somehow. Now, I'm not saying that's impossible. That's definitely an option, but it's an option that I would have to research a little more before I just go and do that. I don't know, guys. Perhaps you can let me know in the comments. Is there a way to actually raise this roof rack with some kind of shims or blocks high enough that I can put a flat long rooftop tent on the rack where I don't have to worry about, as the body shifts and rolls, that tent making contact with the passenger compartment, because I also don't want to ruin the fiberglass roof. So while I was in that thought process on deciding the Gladiator versus the Wrangler, there are a few possible features that might have made the Wrangler a better choice for someone with a family of 5. The items in the back of the Wrangler, if I had a 4-door Wrangler, would be more accessible. So my older kid in the back could reach back and grab stuff and hand it up to the front. And in addition to that, out on those trails, the Jeep Wrangler has a much tighter turning radius. So I'm absolutely surprised with how wide the turning radius is on the Jeep Gladiator. Because these vehicles are trail rated, I feel like it should have a tighter turning radius. Now, I'm not an automotive engineer, so I don't know if maybe there's a trade-off between the flexibility for off-road suspension versus having a tight turning radius. I'm sure there are some engineering concerns there with that design. However, for a trail-rated vehicle, I have found myself in quite a few locations where I either have to back out of some place to get to a more convenient place to turn around, or do like a 10-point turn to get turned around. And although that issue is really just a gripe on my part, it is an observation that I feel is relevant to any potential Gladiator buyer. It's simply not going to handle like that 2-door Jeep Wrangler will. And on the opposite end of that spectrum, for someone who does primarily most of my driving on pavement, having that wider turn radius also likely equates to a much more stable ride at highway speeds. That's because the vehicle's long and narrow, and it does wander a little bit, but I can imagine that that 2-door Wrangler would wander much more on highways. And I still haven't made a final decision on whether or not I regret this decision, and that is to go with this deck drawer system. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the design, I love the quality of it. It is definitely an excellent product, but the deck drawer system in this already small bed is not as much space as you might imagine. So yes, the dimensions and the space or the volume of it is on the website. It's very clearly stated. However, as I started to load it out with my family of 5, I quickly filled this thing up. So just imagine, this system comes with 3 totes already that are designed perfectly to fit in here. I've got one of those for cooking supplies, one of them for dry goods. I've got another one for just my coffee stuff because I love to drink coffee, and that takes up half of this drawer alone. Now imagine adding 3 or 4 backpacks on top of that. This thing fills up pretty quick. However, if you're just going camping with 2, maybe 3 folks max, this is a perfect accessory to put your gear in, and when the bed is closed, you can lock the bed and whatever's in there is essentially secure. And this is kind of a bonus observation, but I recently installed this fridge slider on the deck drawer system, and so far I'm loving it. I had the fridge completely loaded out this weekend, no problems with the operation of the fridge or the operation of the slide. But when I installed it, I put a few rubber grommets in the bolt holes where I had to drill through the deck bed, and some of those are leaking a little. And luckily, everything inside of the deck drawer was inside of those little totes that they provided. However, I don't want that to leak. So over the next few weeks, I'll have to pull this off again and go around each of those holes with some silicone or something to seal the holes. So I was kind of griping about the rack earlier. This is a rack by Hook Road. I do have a 5% off coupon or discount code in the video description. I have started to visualize possibly making a cover for it. And the way that I started is, this is just a standard size Army issue poncho. And I bought a set of magnets. These are super strong magnets, and this poncho actually fits perfectly over this bed. So what I'm going to do right now is just install this really quickly, just to give you an idea of a possible way to either weatherproof or make your items inside a little less visible. If I'm gonna do this permanently, this poncho isn't necessarily the right answer. I would get something a little bigger, but just check it out. So this is just an idea that I have. I want to measure this space out and get something perfect. But as it is right now, I'm about 80% waterproof with just that poncho on top. So what I might try to do is get something where I can close out the front compartment here and make this more of a deliberate cover or cap for this. And then also a flap around the back that I can close out this area. So as this poncho lays right now, I would feel comfortable sleeping on the bed right here if I'm solo, and at least not getting drenched if it rains. Yes, it's gonna leak a little bit, but if I can come up with something, maybe even buy a second poncho and just fold the door or sew a door onto it, sew a door onto the front, and then just shape it this way, then for about $100 for 2 ponchos, I've pretty much got a soft topper that goes on top of this bed rack. The next big upgrade I'm making to this Jeep is installing a rooftop tent. I've already ordered it. I've been in contact with the shipping company. They're gonna deliver it pretty soon. So if you're interested in seeing that or any of my camping adventures or off-roading or overlanding adventures, please subscribe to the channel. And otherwise, watch this video next to check out my latest camping adventure.